Liebe Zuschauerinnen und Zuschauer, herzlich willkommen zurück zu Zeit für Klima, dem dritten Tag heute unserer digitalen Themenwoche rund um das Thema und die Frage, wie wir den Fokus auf den Klimawandel hoch und die Temperaturen auf der Welt möglichst niedrig halten. Mein Name ist Marc Schiffhauer, ich leite das Konferenzgeschäft bei der ZEIT und bin zusammen mit meinem Team Initiator dieser Woche und freue mich, dass Sie heute wieder eingeschaltet haben. Gestern Morgen um diese Uhrzeit ging es hier um Agrar und Ernährung. Bei uns im Studio war genau zu dieser Uhrzeit Robert Habeck und der hat einen schönen Satz gesagt, den ich Ihnen heute einmal frei zitieren möchte. Wir sollten nicht so viel über Klimaschutz reden, sondern über Menschheitsschutz, denn dem Klima ist es recht herzlich egal, wie warm es uns Menschen auf der Welt wird. So einfach, so wahr. Wir wollen hier heute weiter diskutieren. Gestern wurde viel gestritten, es darf gerne weiter gestritten werden, aber wir streiten hier nicht für oder wider, nicht pro oder contra irgendetwas, zum Beispiel pro oder contra Auto, pro oder contra Milchbau oder pro oder contra traditionelle Landwirtschaft. Wir wollen Positionen vermitteln, Diskurs anregen und Sie können mitdiskutieren. Und zwar über Slido. Rechts auf unserer Website können Sie Fragen stellen. Wenn Sie dort Fragen eingeben, reichen wir die in allen Live-Sessions an unsere Moderatorinnen und Moderatoren weiter, die dann hier auf dem iPad die Fragen ablesen können und an unsere Diskutanten stellen. Außerdem können Sie unter dem Hashtag Zeit für Klima, für mit Umlaut, in den sozialen Medien mitdiskutieren. Und in den Pausen können Sie tatsächlich, auch wenn wir uns hier nur digital begegnen, reale Menschen treffen. Wie das geht, erkläre ich Ihnen jetzt. Sie brauchen einfach eine Kamera und müssen den Ton Ihres Laptops eingeschaltet lassen, wie bei allen Meetings, die Sie in den letzten Monaten gemacht haben. Und dann gehen Sie hier unten in den Pausen auf der Website in den Networking Space. Wir stellen Ihnen gleich auf Slido 8 Themengebiete vor, von denen Sie bitte 4 auswählen. Zu diesen 4 Themengebieten können Sie dann nachher Menschen treffen, sich mit ihnen austauschen und darüber streiten, ob es denn mehr Parkplätze in Städten geben für Autos sollte oder nicht. Wenn Sie heute nach unserem Themenschwerpunkttag Logistik und Mobilität noch nicht genug haben, keine Sorge, unser Programm geht weiter. Am Donnerstag und am Freitag, morgen Abend, sind hier unter anderem der YouTuber Rezo und Luisa Neubauer zu Gast. Wenn Sie das Programm der folgenden Stunden und Tage sich nochmal anschauen wollen, schauen Sie einfach links in unser Programm auf der Website. Ich möchte die Gelegenheit einmal nutzen und herzlich Danke sagen. Wir von Convent, der Konferenztochter der ZEIT Verlagsgruppe, veranstalten im Jahr normalerweise 60 Events mit über 25.000 Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmern. Wir treffen uns in Berlin, München und Davos. Das haben wir zum letzten Mal im Februar gemacht zur Berlinale bei einer Veranstaltung mit dem ZEIT-Magazin. Seitdem haben wir über 50 Veranstaltungen abgesagt und uns einmal komplett neu erfunden, unter anderem diese digitale Themenwoche. Gestern fragte ich einen Kollegen in der Regie bei der Vorbereitung, sind wir eigentlich noch eine Event-Company oder sind wir schon ein Fernsehsender? Der Kollege lachte und sagte, irgendwas dazwischen. Ich glaube, er hat recht. Wie dem auch sei, ich möchte Ihnen danken. Ihnen, liebe Zuschauerinnen und Zuschauer, dass Sie uns die Treue gehalten haben und hier und letzte Woche bei unserer ersten Themenwoche Zeit für Wissen dabei sind, eingeschaltet haben, mitdiskutiert haben. Ich möchte meinem Team bei Convent Kongresse und Tempus Corporate danken, die hinter den Kameras hier die ganze Logistik auf die Beine gestellt haben und dafür sorgen, dass Sie alle zuschauen können. Ab und zu geht auch mal was schief. Wir lernen noch. Wir bitten um Geduld, sollte das auch heute passieren. Und ich möchte den Kolleginnen und Kollegen in der Redaktion danken. Sie haben einen fantastischen Job gemacht und neben den Artikeln, die Sie für Print und Online schreiben, hier moderiert. Das ist großartig und wir danken natürlich unseren Sprecherinnen und Sprechern, die in Studios gekommen sind oder sich per Zoom eingewählt haben. Wir sagen herzlich Danke. Und danken möchte ich auch unseren Partnern. Sie alle sind hier kostenfrei dabei. Sie müssen kein Ticket kaufen. Wir wollten die Barrieren möglichst niedrig halten, damit Sie möglichst zahlreich mitdiskutieren können. Das geht nur ohne Partner, denn das Studio, die Kameras, selbst dieser iPad kostet Geld. Und dafür danke ich den Partnern unseres heutigen Tages. Das sind die Deutsche Bahn, der Hamburger Hafen, die HHLA, die Hamburger Hochbahn und die Alfred-Herrhausen Gesellschaft. Heute also Logistik und Mobilität. Was erwartet Sie? Ich kann Ihnen versprechen, es wird spannend. Mein Kollege Klaas Tatje aus der Wirtschaftsredaktion wird unter anderem mit Angela Tietzra, der Chefin des Hamburger Hafens, darüber reden, wie wir es denn schaffen, wenn immer mehr Leute über E-Commerce bestellen, dass die Lieferketten bis ins Hinterland CO2-neutral bleiben. Außerdem werden wir die Frage stellen, wie denn Corona eigentlich die Lieferketten verändert hat und ob denn Hamburg im Wettbewerb mit internationalen Logistik-Hubs wie Rotterdam, Dubai und Singapur überhaupt noch eine Chance hat. Und Klaas Tatje wird auch mit Verkehrsminister Andreas Scheuer sprechen und ihn fragen, ob es denn nun endlich mal klappt mit der Elektromobilität in Deutschland oder ob der Zug für uns schon abgefahren ist. Er wird ihn fragen, ob Wasserstoff wirklich eine Alternative ist für den Antrieb im Auto und ob der Green Deal uns wirklich über 100.000 Arbeitsplätze kostet. Entschuldigung. Sie haben es vielleicht gelesen, der CO2-Ausstoß in den Autoflotten soll bis 2030 um 50% reduziert werden. Das ist eine Menge. Einige schreiben, das kostet über 100.000 Arbeitsplätze. Aber bevor wir über das Auto und die Häfen reden, wollen wir erstmal über das reden, was uns alle bewegt, nämlich über die Stadt. Dort wohnen die meisten Menschen auf dieser Welt. Wir haben eine strikte Trennung zwischen Verlag und Redaktion bei der ZEIT, aber ich darf Ihnen etwas Schönes zeigen. Meine Kollegin Petra Pinzler hat einen wunderbaren Artikel geschrieben als Aufmacher dieser Woche in der Zeitung und der heißt Autofreie Stadt, geht denn das? Und diese Utopie werden wir gleich zum Teil in den folgenden Diskussionsrunden diskutieren, aber ich möchte Ihnen einmal ein paar Bilder zeigen, denn ein bisschen hatten wir während Corona in der zugegebenermaßen Dystopie auch ein bisschen Utopie schon gesehen. Das sind Fotos meines Nachbarn Alex Habermehl. Er ist bekannt geworden unter dem Synonym Frankfurter Bub und hat während Corona in Frankfurt Fotos gemacht, als der Lockdown war. Das ist die A66. Ich zeige Ihnen diese Bilder jetzt und lasse sie einmal wirken. Das ist das Eschenheimer Tor. Die alte Oper. Auch das Eschenheimer Tor. Ich hoffe, Sie können die Bilder klar sehen. Die Innenstadt, leere Straßenzüge. Keine Menschen. Was fehlt, ist der Corona-blaue Himmel. Das ist der Theaterplatz, auch leer. Die Innenstadt. Und die Zeil. Menschenleer, Stille. Kein Mensch braucht Corona und Corona hat nichts Gutes. Aber die Stille, die wir dort wahrgenommen haben, die Vögel, die wir wieder zwitschern hörten, haben uns gezeigt, wie Stadt auch sein kann und was wir vielleicht auch ein bisschen vermisst haben. Ruhe. Ob die Stadt autofrei werden kann, wie man die Stadt neu denken und bauen kann, was Corona verändert hat und welche Rolle Verkehrsträger spielen, darüber wollen wir heute Morgen diskutieren. Mit Vertreterinnen aus Amsterdam, aus London, aus Paris, aus Sierra Leone in Afrika und natürlich aus Hamburg, aus Deutschlands schönster Stadt mit Hamburg. Beginnen aber wollen wir in Bogota, einer 8-Millionen-Metropole und mit Enrique Peñalosa. Der war dort zweimal Bürgermeister, zuletzt von 2015 bis 2019. Er hat Bike Lanes eingeführt und den Bus zum zentralen Verkehrsmittel ausgebaut, weil es sein musste. Wie er das geschafft hat und was die Hürden waren und was er glaubt, was nach Corona kommt, darüber hat mit ihm gesprochen meine Kollegin aus der Redaktion, Petra Pinzler. Viel Vergnügen und wir sehen uns in einer halben Stunde wieder.
Hello, Mr. Peñalosa. We are very glad to have you here today in our session about sustainable cities and the question how we can make our cities better places for living. The way we will go through the session is that you will present us a couple of minutes your ideas. You have a presentation prepared by you about what you think makes cities good cities and livable cities. So we're looking forward to your presentation, and then I have the pleasure to ask you a couple of questions. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Petra. It is an honor and a pleasure to be with you here at this meeting of the ZEIT. There has been much speculation that after COVID-19, cities will greatly change, that people will no longer want to live in large, dense cities, that they will want to go live in the suburbs or small towns or maybe in a deserted beach and work from home. I believe that the reasons why people have chosen to live in large, dense cities will continue to exist after COVID-19 has gone away. We, of course, have felt some needs for adjustments in our cities after the quarantines. We will need more green, for example, better places to grow. But I think we should concentrate rather than in some utopian ideas that people will not go back to work and cities will no longer exist, and to try to make cities better, because cities are going to grow enormously over the next 50 years. For example, sub-Saharan African cities will grow more than 10 times. That means that, for example, more than 90% of the cities that will exist, of a city that will exist in 50 years, has not yet been built. And this will happen in hundreds of cities. Indian cities will also grow hugely, for example, more than 5 times. Many Indian cities, much more than that. So a great majority of the cities that will exist has not yet been built. So they can be built different and better. In Latin America, the size of cities will double. But even in the United States, over the next 50 years, more homes will be built in cities than today exist in the United Kingdom, France, and Canada put together. So we have a huge challenge and a great opportunity to make cities that are more sustainable, happier, and which produce more equality over the next 50 years. Cities will grow for many reasons. One is that population is going to grow, but others is that households are going to become smaller, and also that there will be, as cities become richer, there are many buildings which are not for housing, for such as offices, gyms, warehouses, etc. But if we continue to build cities the way we have been building them, there will be many problems for quality of life, and they will not be very sustainable. To begin with, we have slums. We have more than 1 billion people living in slums. There are slums in every developing country city. Slums grow by the millions every week. As we are speaking, hundreds of thousands of people, millions, are building their shacks, their little homes in illegal areas in different cities. If we want cities to grow with adequate public spaces in the right places, where they should grow, actually, if we want cities to grow in the right places, in the right way, we need to have land that belongs to government, or complete government control of the land. We cannot have simply some landowners with cattle speculating with land, while the poorest people have to go solve their housing problems in slums. Now, if we talk about sustainable cities, nothing is more important for urban sustainability than sustainable mobility. And what is most important for sustainable mobility is location. We need dense cities, compact cities. If we have compact cities that do not grow spread out, all sustainable mobility works well. Bicycles, walking, trains, buses. And on the other hand, with spread out cities, no sustainable mobility works well. Of course, a terrible threat to sustainable mobility are American-type suburbs. And they are not only happening in Texas, they are happening in all developing country cities. This picture you see is not Texas or Miami is Bogota. Not Bogota, but the surrounding municipalities. And this is happening in Manila, and it's happening in Karachi, and everywhere in the developing world. This has to change. Now, the 15-minute city is just nice sounding words. I will almost say, let's be serious. It is not possible for people to live near where they work. Even in self-contained cities which have been designed in the past, it has not happened. People find a job that is much farther. Moreover, the lowest income people are those who have to live normally farther away from their work. So what is really practical and democratic is not to talk about 15-minute cities, which is a cute and nice thing, but to have sustainable transport, quality mass transit everywhere, quality mass transit in every part of the city, low cost, high quality mass transit, so that people can go use the city for work, for recreation, for education. Now, we need, of course, not only mass transit, we need bicycling, we need shaded infrastructure for bicycles in developing country cities which normally are tropical. We need shaded quality sidewalks. Here in Bogota, this picture I show you is, for example, a 24-kilometer bicycle highway we built. We have about 120 kilometers of bicycle highways now, and more than 700 kilometers of protected bikeways. Bogota, we started first before than most American cities, and now we have about 8% of the population using bicycles every day to go to work in a about 8 million inhabitant city. Now, as for mass transit, the only possible form of mass transit that is accessible to developing country cities are bus-based systems, BRT. Advanced countries, and for example, some German companies, are always very keen to sell rail systems to developing country cities, sometimes in not very orthodox ways. But the fact is that rail systems are too expensive. It is not possible to dream that we are going to solve the mobility of Manila or Jakarta with the rail systems. We may have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 rail lines, subway lines, but that will not cover even 10 or 15% of the demand. So we need bus-based systems, BRT. This is our Bogota BRT. This BRT moves more people per hour direction or more people per kilometer than all subways in Europe, but it costs 15 times less per kilometer, while a normal European passenger in mass transit costs about $7 to $8. This covers cost with about 60 cents of a dollar. Now, BRT is a political challenge, of course, because we need to take space away from cars. And it's mostly middle upper, and upper income people who have cars. By the way, BRT with open windows is a very appropriate system for a COVID risk. Now I want to talk about why people will not leave large dense cities in order to go to small towns or suburbs. In general, people do like to go to large dense cities, except in some very few places in the world, such as in Germany, where you like small cities. But why do people like large dense cities? Why have people gone to large dense cities? Because there are much more opportunities for study, for work, for recreation. Large dense cities are more productive. There are more cultural opportunities, theater, dance, restaurants, even dog competitions if we want, astronomy classes, painting classes, music classes, etc. I don't think people will go work in a faraway beach. For example, my father and my mother, they had about 9 siblings each. I had 4, and I have only 2 children. And so households are becoming smaller and smaller. We live more and more by ourselves. half of the households in Scandinavia are of only one person. And in the higher income levels of Bogota, also almost half of homes are only one person. We live in small households by ourselves or maybe another person. So if 80 years ago there was internet, we could have lived in a deserted beach, because nearby there would be 15 or 20 houses of aunts and uncles, and maybe each of those houses with 10 cousins, and we will have just in our family 200 people in our close family. But now our family is more our friends, and our home is the city. More and more, for each time that we invite friends over to dinner at our home, maybe we meet with friends at a restaurant or a cafe 20 or 30 or 40 times. We live by ourselves. We more than ever need our friends. We more than ever need the city. We more than ever need the city to be with other people. I have seen in the New York cafes how people with a laptop sit by themselves at a table in a cafe. Why don't they sit at home? Because they want to be with people. We like to go to concerts with 100,000 spectators. And of course, we could see and listen to the concert much better at a video screen at home. But we want to be with people. We like crowded restaurants, cafes. We even like parks where there are people. We travel to the other planet to do business with people we could have met just through a screen, but we want to see them in person, to feel. I don't think office work is going to disappear either. Why? Because if we are together with other people, not just through a screen, we laugh more. We enjoy ourselves more. We have more fun. We are more creative. So I think that we will need cities that are better than we have today. And we have felt that clearly over the COVID-19 crisis. We will need cities again with ubiquitous public transport, with wonderful pedestrian spaces, with parks, greenways, crisscrossing them in all directions. This is very easy to do in the new cities that are going to be built. And of course, we will need better internet for all citizens.
Mr. Peñalosa, great thanks for this wonderful and interesting presentation. You made me very jealous when you showed me the pictures of the bike lanes in Bogota. I'm living in Berlin. We are still working on getting these kind of fast lanes for bicycles. I remember, I told you before that I was in Bogota when you, in the year of 2000, had the first car-free day in Bogota, which makes me think you need to be a little bit of a visionary. You have to have a certain utopian thinking to do these things. You did them 20 years ago, while during your presentation, you actually told us not to be utopianists. So how does this get together?
No, it's true that we did a car-free day, but actually in developing country cities, Petra, almost by definition, only a minority of people have cars. In Bogota, for example, only about between 25 and 30% of households have cars, but only 14% of the people go by car to work every day. So if we have a car-free day, actually it's car-free day every day for 66% of the people. So if we were to ban cars during peak hours every day, everybody would be better off. There would be less traffic, public transport would work better, there would be less pollution. So I think the car-free day is an interesting experiment that we did by the vote of the people. So nobody can change it, not the president, not Congress, only another vote of the people. But
why is it just a day? We have a discussion starting slowly in Germany that maybe it's not just about car-free days, but it's about freeing the cities of cars, giving back the space to, as you just mentioned, to the majority of the people who apparently don't use cars. You think that could be a way to better cities?
Yes, that's what I am suggesting. At least we could ban cars every day during peak hours. At least, for example, from 6:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the morning, and from 4:30 in the afternoon to 6:30 in the afternoon.
Which is exactly the time most of the people use the car to get into the city.
Yes, I mean, if they want to use the car, they can use it at a different time. But here we have many things. When we talk about car-free day, it's a totally car-free day. I mean, we mean an 8 million inhabitant city with no cars, no private cars. We allow taxis, but so this is very radical because, every Sunday in Bogota, we have something similar to what in Europe they call a car-free day, which is we close about 120 kilometers of main arteries to cars. But I think the bus system, the BRT system, is also a very radical thing because it takes space away from cars in the most important arteries and gives it to public transport. And this is a very democratic thing to do because then public transport goes much faster than cars, but I don't like the idea of putting people underground in subways if we can avoid it. If we can avoid it.
It's too expensive.
I know it's not only expensive, but it's more pleasant for people to be on the surface, to see the natural sunlight, to see the city. But of course, it's too expensive. Rail systems are way too expensive. Buses very soon will all be electric and driverless. And if we have exclusive lanes for buses, you can have great mass transit systems, bus-based. Even if we invest, we are now building, last time I was mayor, we contracted the first subway line for Bogota. But even if we make 2 or 3 or 5 subway lines, this will maybe move 15 or 20% of the population. But the rest of the city was going to happen. So I think these systems are very democratic, also because the expensive cars is in the traffic jam, and then they see the bus zoom by next to them. That means that public good prevails over private interest. And I think it's the only solution. I think there is no other possible solution, even if we have a few subway lines.
So when I try to pick the keywords of what you were just presenting, one of the keywords apparently is public. We need public transport, we need public spaces, because the more you privatize, the more you let people into cities with private cars, give them private spaces, the less democratic it is and the less good it is for the majority of the people.
Yes, I believe that a good city can construct a lot of equality. In a good city, rich people and poor people meet as equals in public spaces. This may be very obvious to you in Berlin, but this is not in developing countries. So if we are, for example, the basis of democracy is not that the people vote. That's an ingredient, but is that public good prevails over private interest. So, for example, if we have large country clubs, as we do have in all developing country cities, but we have very few parks or none, if public good prevails, these country clubs with golf courses should be turned into public parks. For example, when I was mayor, we turned the most exclusive country club in the country, we turned the polo fields into a public park. But we need to go much farther to turn the golf courses into public parks. We need to take space away from cars to do great sidewalks, bikeways, busways. It may be very obvious to you, again, I say, the fact that people, the low-income people and high-income people meet as equals, because high-income people and low-income people always meet. But one is the company president and the other one is the person who cleans the floor or the toilets. The interesting thing is if these two people meet as equals, as they meet in public transport or in sidewalks or in parks or in some cultural activities. So I believe cities can do a lot to make everybody feel inclusive so that nobody feels inferior or excluded. And that's the great challenge in developing country cities where we have so much inequality.
You worked as a mayor, so you probably had to face a lot of pressure when you started doing things like taking lanes away from cars, like giving people back parks, public using private ground for public parks. So how strong has a mayor to be? We see mayors like you all over the world trying these things, and apparently it's not that easy. So where is the difficulties coming from?
It's very difficult. For example, we achieved some things in Bogota. Bogota BRT system is moving today 2.5 million people per day. We still have we were able to contract an important increase, about 50% when I was mayor, which is now under construction. But we have some very big defeats, losses. For example, my big dream was to have the BRT going through the main artery of the richest area of the city. In an unequal city such as this, upper income people are very concentrated in small areas. So I would say this is like a 5-6 kilometer stretch where the most important artery in this part, we were going to put the BRT. And the upper income people, of course, some of them opposed because they did not want their part of the city to be like others. Amazingly enough, a lot of politicking, and some of those politicians which call themselves leftist politicians were also the ones who helped the upper income people not to build this project. And even though the project was totally ready with all the designs, the money, the bidding process was open, also some politicized judges stopped the project. So the powerful people finally were able to block this project. So sometimes we win some and we lose many too.
There's one more conflict of interest, as I would call it. You argue that a lot of people will try still to get into cities, that the cities will grow, but that we have to have dense cities because people like it and because we don't want so much urban sprawl, like in the picture that you showed us from Bogota that you can see all over the United States where people live in their single houses with a little stretch of garden, that this is not the way cities should develop. At the same time, we want sustainable cities. So how can dense cities be sustainable?
Oh, because dense city is much more sustainable because a dense city has shorter distances. A dense city, a dense city is the one that makes it possible to have sustainable transport. For example, in a city like Bogota, temperature is perfect, as you have seen because you were here. Everybody in the world pays a lot of money in air conditioning or heating to achieve Bogota temperature. So what uses energy and creates global warming is not heating or cooling, but transport. And so we need sustainable transport. We need bicycling, we need mass transit. And for that to work, we need a compact city. Distances are shorter. The only way to have low cost, high frequency public transport is with compact cities. Now, a dense city can also be very green, and that's what we lack. That's what we need in developing countries. We need not just dense cities, but cities which have great sidewalks, a lot of parks. We could have greenways, parks, crisscrossing the city in all directions, hundreds of kilometers of parks, crisscrossing the city in all directions. So a dense city is sustainable because it uses much less energy than the spread out city, but it can also have a lot of trees, a lot of parks, a lot of pedestrian spaces. So I think, why do people like to go to the suburbs? Because they have more green, because they have more gardens. But maybe we can have dense cities which offer the same things that the people seek in the suburbs, which will offer a lot of green, a lot of parks, bicycle highways within tree-covered areas. I think that's possible. We can have...
You don't see the trend that people, we are living in Corona times, that Corona kind of not just forces people, but makes the people wish to live in the suburbs, out of the cities, where the virus is spreading, especially in poor areas, much quicker than in rich areas. Do you think the Corona times are just times that will go by and we will go back to the times before, or will they change our way of looking at cities?
I don't think that the people will change. After the Corona goes away, people will go back to the dense cities. Now it's like, why have people gone to dense cities in the past? People go to dense cities because they offer a lot of opportunities, because they offer a lot of variety for any interest that people may have, be astronomy or Greek literature or any interest in a large city. Is more possible to find people who are interested in the same thing. There are more opportunities. There is more diversity. So I think that that people will not like to work at home, because if we work together with other people, we are more creative. We laugh more. We enjoy more, and so. And again, I say that households now are very small. Households are very small. People live by themselves. It's not like 80 years ago when households may be 8 or 10 people in Colombia. So
same here.
More and more is our family is our friends. And we meet our friends in the city. We meet our friends in the cafes, in the restaurants, in the sports facilities, in the cultural activities. So a large density offers much more opportunities for people to advance in their work, to advance in the interests they have, be it art or sports or whatever. So I think the reasons that have made large cities exist, large dense cities, are going to continue to exist. And of course, after this COVID crisis passes, people will go back. Now, some things will stay. And I think COVID has made us feel how important green spaces are. I think we will want cities with more green. We will want cities with better pedestrian spaces. And perhaps, of course, the most important thing that we will need is cities with better internet, which is something which is not an issue for you in Germany.
Actually, we still have the same problem like you. Internet could be better. We actually have to, unfortunately, close the session because our time is running out. But tell me, besides Bogota, which would be the city that you would most likely live in if you had the free choice to choose?
Well, I think, I like several Latin American cities. I like Mexico, but I like New York. I like New York very much.
So you definitely like dense cities. Give us, to really finish this session, one...
and I love Berlin. I wish I knew German, but I think Berlin is an amazing city with a very special energy.
Tell us the one thing that Berlin could learn from Bogota. I would say bike lanes, but maybe there's something else that we could learn from you.
Well, Berlin has wonderful things that I think we could learn from Berlin. I have been trying to convince my fellow citizens that, we have a river which has been a sewage pool, a cesspool, or the sewage water, and now we are cleaning it. And it has almost the same amount of flow as the river in Berlin. And so I would love the river in Bogota the city to be around the river, as it is in the Spree River. I would like our city to learn a lot from Berlin. What could Berlin learn from us? I don't know. For example, Bogota is the city in the world with the most places to dance in the planet. Maybe that's one thing we have more than Berlin.
Okay, then let's see whether I will dance with you in Bogota, you will dance with me in Berlin. We actually in Berlin have this great project that we can maybe one day clean the river so much that we have a swimming pool in the city center. Let's see if this works. I thank you very much for your great input and all the best to you in Bogota. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Thank you very much.